This game where you suit up in an Iron Man suit to take on hordes of dinosaurs sound like a fun time to me, and that is the main premise of Exoprimal. This will be a review video slash first impressions in a cooperative game where you sometimes do PvP. So I'm playing this game through Game Pass. So if you don't have the subscription or are playing on PlayStation or Steam, you are gonna have to buy this game. I find this odd since the game is a games as a service title. So as you might expect, it has a battle pass and it might feel like a skeleton of a game, but hopefully with a few updates the game will feel more whole. Luckily, even though there is a battle pass, most of the skins can actually be purchased with in-game currency, with only a few of them being locked behind the battle pass itself, or you having to actually purchase them with real money. The game does have loot boxes, but they're actually pretty consistently give you new items. And even if you don't get new items, you will have Bitcoin. That's the currency of this game. And you can just buy most of the cosmetics with them. So opening war chests is still a pretty good way to just get what you want eventually. My guess as to why they're actually pretty generous is because since the game's new, there's not a lot in the loot table at the moment, so people playing early will have a bit of an edge on getting the cosmetics they want. Also, as you start out the game, you do get a war chest every 2 to 3 levels, but once you get past level 50, you get one every level, so if you play consistently enough, you will get what you want. Oh yeah, one last thing, you do need a Capcom ID to play this game, so it might be a little annoying if you haven't played Capcom games and don't have an ID ready. But besides that, the game is neat and the gameplay is surprisingly solid and fun. But the game does fall short in a couple of ways, and I'll be going through aspects of the game starting with the gameplay. As of the writing of this review, there is only one game mode available in the game, which is Dino Survival. The main loop of the game is putting you in a squad of 5 people to complete a certain amount of objectives that the AI Leviathan throws at your team. Some of the highlights of these, though, there are certain missions that most people refer to as raids, have you fight gigantic hordes of dinosaurs, and also there are some boss fights, but unfortunately I can't really show them since I don't have footage of it. Anyways, now depending on you pick PvE or PvP, you might not only fight dinosaurs, but also other players in their own suits. However, no matter which mode you pick, you will be competing with another team of 5 to complete the objectives faster. Now this is good or bad depending on what kind of player you are. If you like competition, you'll get your fill of trying to beat other players, or beating them directly if you like the PvP aspect of it. But if you much more prefer to just shoot dinosaurs with your friends, you might want to stick to PvE, even though in PvE you can still get disrupted by the other team. Because there is a mechanic where one of the players will get the chance to control a dinosaur and attack the other team. If you played Destiny 2, this is very similar to invading in Gambit. Both teams get a chance to attack with the dinosaur mechanic, but it can be a little annoying to get pinned against multiple large dinosaurs. But it is fun to control the dinosaurs and do that to other people, so take it as you will. Now, this is a 5v5 centered game, which means there are roles to be filled. But unfortunately, right now, the game lacks a role queuing matchmaking. So, if your teammates decide that they don't want to play tank or healer, or there's just not enough damage to lift, because that does happen as well, your team is probably gonna lose unless you do the switching, because most of the time people will not switch. So it's something that could be avoided in the future if the developers implement role queuing, but for now that is an issue. I will briefly mention in PvP there are a couple extra objectives to be done, because normally you only have Dinosaur Cull, which has you defeat a certain number and a certain type of dinosaurs before being able to move on to the next objective. And there's also Area Defense, which you just hold a point from the dinosaurs. But the extra ones that can pop up in PvP are Data Key Security, Energy Taker, Omega Charge, and VTOL Defense. I won't get into them, but it does add a little bit of variety if you happen to play with PvP on. One last thing, this is a little bit of a side gripe, but the AI can get a little annoying with its repetitive lines. This includes the actual characters having lines for certain actions that they do, or a Leviathan himself saying that you're faster or slower than the other team and repeating over and over again what the objective is. Now that I've gone through the general gameplay, I'll be talking about the exosuits. Each suit falls in one of three categories: assault, tank, or support. All the suits can be equipped with a rig, which is basically a universal active skill that can range from a laser beam, a small healing field, or an electrified shuriken that can stun dinosaurs. All suits have some other abilities and a dodge primarily, and their overdrive, which is basically an ultimate ability. These need to be charged, the overdrive needs to be charged, but it can offer a great way to get rid of big threats or save your teammates. Lastly, each suit can be equipped with up to 3 modules, which give them passive buffs or change their unique abilities slightly. One gripe though I have is that you cannot check the abilities of your suit unless you're in-game. This does count being in-game in the firing range, but it is a slight annoyance that you can't check out what the abilities even do before you actually get it into a game. Now, a little breakdown of each suit category. First up, the assault suits. Currently there are 4 assault suits, with 3 being unlocked right from the start. As you might expect, the assault suits are the damage dealers whose main job is to take down the smaller dinosaurs quickly or do big or constant damage to bigger ones. While I won't go into depth as to what each suit can do, each of them has a basic role. We have the basic assault rifle suit, a melee focused suit, a grenadier, and a sniper. Now the tanks. There are 3 tanks, with 2 of them being available right from the start. As the name implies, tanks tank damage. Each tank has its own unique way of protecting their teammate, but primarily they'll just be taking the hits for the rest of the team. However, some of them are able to taunt dinosaurs towards them, or do big damage to them with certain moves. But primarily they're just there to kinda take the attention away from the squishier teammates. And last but certainly not least, we have the support suits, whose main job is to heal the team. Just like in the tank category, there are 3 suits in this category, but with 2 being available right from the start. These suits focus on keeping the rest of the team alive, and also provide support in other ways, like one of the suits being able to consistently stun dinosaurs, one being able to stay alive by staying airborne, and one actually being able to deal damage with a mix of healing and DPS. So, the game has a solid foundation, suits to play and master, but it can get a little stale, as I said before, if you only do PvE. Now, we're gonna focus on the story of Exoprimal. Now, I will be spoiling the story of the game, so if you don't want to get spoiled, please skip to the timestamp I'm gonna show on screen right now. Alright, time to get into this story that gets a little bit convoluted, just because there is time travel involved in this whole game. Also, I will be saying some things out of order story-wise probably, but at the end of this section I will be showing the cutscene that explains all this information in a bit of a summary. The story starts with a character walking on screen, and this is your character. You start the customization of their face, and then they continue with their interview, and finally they do an aptitude test, which serves as the tutorial. Your character passes with flying colors, and you get assigned to the Hammerhead's crew, who is primarily focused on patrol. Afterwards, we are introduced to the rest of the crew. Lorenzo, who is the chief of the crew and a bit of a mechanic. Alders, who is an ex-exofighter, who happens to have lost an arm, so this is the reason he is an ex-exofighter. I'll get into that in a little bit. Majesty, who happens to be the main exofighter of the group. And we also have Sandy, who is our AI robot companion, who is pretty helpful. And as I'm gonna mention right now, our character is named Ace, and I will be referring to this character as Ace for the rest of the video. As your crew is doing a routine patrol around Bikato Island, a space-time vortex appears and forces your ship to a crash land. Now, for context, the world is in a state of pandemic, where portals are spitting out dinosaurs all over the world. This started happening after a stratovator in Bikatoa Island exploded. What caused all this to happen in the first place is slowly unraveled as you play wargames. Occasionally you get lost data after a match, which is used in the analysis tree. I will be explaining what the analysis tree is and what it does, but essentially it gives you little bits and pieces of what the giant corporation Ibius was doing on this island. Because of course, a giant corporation can't ever be good in games, and they were up to no good. Getting sidetracked though. As the hammerheads are about to crash, Ace jumps out with suit in tow because Majesty is injured during the turmoil of crash landing. During his outing out on the island, the AI Leviathan finds them and forcibly teleports them through time to fight dinosaurs 3 years in the past. This just so happens to be the year that the stratovator exploded in Bikatoa Island and the time where the world pandemic started. Then, as we're running around from a huge horde of raptors, another exofighter appears. He helps us out and helps us stay alive, and he introduces himself as Magnum. He is also a fellow fighter trapped on this island, and same situation, because now we're introducing parallel universes. Right before everyone goes back to their own universe, he gives Ace a coin, and then everyone's sent back. But he does, before he sends everyone sent back, he does let Ace know that the machine he walked by right before he got teleported should be taken back to his crew. This machine happens to be a transdimensional transmitter that allows your crew to keep in touch with Magnum. At first, Chief Lorenzo doesn't believe what Magnum is saying about time travel and multiple dimensions until he tells he tells his own version of Lorenzo to walk on and say hi to himself. Also, he mentions the coin that he gave Ace. That happens to be the same one Lorenzo uses to do his coin flips. Anyways, now I'm gonna explain the analysis tree, which is a bit of an annoyance to me personally, but I'll explain why. As I mentioned before, after a match, you occasionally get lost data, which is used to fill out the outer edges of the analysis tree. With enough of those little squares filled out, you trigger one of the mysteries in the section. I will mention I had to play 75 games before I managed to fill out the analysis tree and have the in-game cutscenes and missions play out for me. This number may be higher or lower for some people, however. My guess is that the developers figured that people would take short breaks after games to check out the tree and then go back to playing a couple games after they unraveled some mysteries. But, unfortunately, if you're playing with friends, most of the time you will not get those breaks, or your mysteries are gonna be cut off because you'll be matchmaking while you're maybe watching these cutscenes. Actually, when you're watching an actual cutscene, the game stops the matchmaking from keeping going, but most people will just not even bother with the tree and have the cutscenes play out without the context of what the mysteries are. Also, sometimes you don't get lost data after a match, which can slow down how fast you're going through the story or the analysis tree, which is also a bit of an annoyance. But anyways, with that rant out of the way, we're gonna continue with the story. So, the crew decides to work with Magnum to find a way out of the island. The following scene is of Magnum sitting on a medbed after getting some injuries from fighting with a headhunter. These headhunters are exo-fighters that, for some reason, are attempting to rip the spine out of exceptional fighters to get this data in their brainstems. These guys literally never come up again for the whole story with one exception. My guess is that there's a game mode that might later be added on that might involve them. But as of the writing of this review, they are essentially non-existent for the rest of the story. There is one mystery mentioning the identity of these guys, besides the one specific one I'll mention later. But we'll treat them as non-existent at this point. As the war games continue, Magnum manages to get some sensitive data that could help and attempts to send the Hammerheads a firmware update for their transmitter because it's needed to potentially help everyone get back home. But his crew is ambushed by a mysterious person that stops this transfer and blows up Magnum and his crew. Now, Majesty, weirdly enough, reacts a little bit. He has a bit of an outburst that he just blames this person and not Leviathan, even though Leviathan seems to be in control of everything. But Magnum, like, he's a cool guy, but there's not much attachment, so for me personally, I didn't really feel anything from him passing away. So unfortunately, he's just gone. Also, when I first played this game when it came out, my friend and I even predicted correctly that he was gonna die. But if you don't believe me, check out the bot of my stream. If you want a specific timestamp, it's 3127. Anyways, the Hammerheads start investigating who the person that blew up Magnum and his crew is and what their motives are. As we move along, we figure out that the skeleton that was clutching the device that Ace took back to the ship is Garrett Sainz, the top scientist who is responsible for a lot of IBS's success with exosuits and Hysol, which is the fuel that everyone in the world uses and that IBS is using to basically control the world through energy. After this, the crew receives a call from alternate dimension Sainz as Majesty is having some sort of fever hallucination. The Sainz requests some data, but this does not happen in the cutscene. This happens in a mystery, essentially. But the request he gives the crew is getting data and equipment back from 2040. They agree, but are suspicious of him. As they find more clues and data, they find out that Lorenzo's sister is also alive during 2040 because the date is exactly the date before the Stratovator blew up. Now we go back to Sainz, because after we find more data that he is requesting, we also find out that the origin suit was found in a dig site in Bigatoa Island. What this entails is that the first exosuit and the technology to use the vortexes actually comes from the future. This also means that IBS did not invent the suits or discover the how to make the vortexers that allows them to get the Hysol that fuels the world. The crew try to get more information out of Sainz by telling him that they know that what he's trying to get from them is the Golden Goose. Golden Goose being the actual name of the device that creates the vortexes. This agitates Sainz, and he actually seeks the same exofighter that killed Magnum and his crew, who at this point we actually know as Durban. We actually meet Durban in one of the special missions that pops up during Dino Survival. Anyways, during this cutscene, he and Majesty duke it out as the rest of the crew is instantly incapacitated with his stun devices as he comes to attack them. Unfortunately, Majesty loses the fight due to her injury, and Sandy's core, which has some of the data of Golden Goose, is taken along with her personality. Luckily, she does not perish as Elders has a backup to keep her online, but the backup is essentially a factory reset, so she is technically lost during this fight. I will mention that at this point we also know that Durban is able to control Leviathan because Sainz has given him an access key, which was also learned through another mystery. Alright, we're moving pretty fast now, so the story starts to kind of slow down a bit and throw in some weird curveballs with all the whole time travel. After gathering more data, the crew finds out that the goddess that the natives of Bigatoa used to worship is actually a majesty of a different timeline. They find a message from the other Majesty who attempted to go back in time to stop IBS in the first place, because in her world, there are Stratovators all over the world, and the pandemic is even worse than the one that is currently happening in our main crew timeline. She unfortunately failed because she went too far back in time, and that's why the natives of the island thought she was a goddess since her exosuit allowed her to do things they just couldn't do. In this message, the alternate timeline Majesty actually gives the crew the algorithm that is used for the time travel. After this, a cutscene plays because this is all revealed in a mystery. But after this cutscene plays, Majesty just cannot believe that a version of herself is attempting to bring down the company that she was trying to be the top dog of. Which I find a little bit odd, just because while it's her, it's also not her, if you know what I mean. If you meet a time... I'm gonna go a bit of a side rant here, but if you meet a alternate version of yourself, it's you, obviously, but it's not you, the person that you are at the moment. So it's not set in stone, you know? Anyways, the rest of the crew, or namely Alder, since our character just gestures, and eventually Lorenzo talks to her, they just kind of comfort her and make sure that she doesn't feel out of place. On a side note, we also find out that the pilot of the orange suit is Yannick Nadi, who is the person that got in contact with Lorenzo's sister to try to destroy Leviathan. He also attempted to go back in time and stop the Stradivarius from even coming up. But he made the same mistake, but even worse. He actually ended up in the Cretaceous period and got killed by dinosaurs. This is also how eventually Ivius discovers the origin suit, his suit. And since they used the brainstem of the apparently the brainstem somehow survives this whole period. I guess the exosuit preserves the body. But anyways, his conscious ends up inside of Leviathan because of this. So we also find out that Yannick, and Haruka, who is Lorenzo's sister, attempted to destroy Leviathan, and this is what actually causes the Stradivarius to explode. Leviathan actually found out of their plan and stopped them, but this caused the accident that exploded the cable connecting the Stradivarius to the core platform. Alright, after so much lore drop, the crew finally manages to track down Durban and has Ace ambush him. As he turns around, he takes his helmet off, and guess who it is? It is alternate timeline Alders. I personally thought it was gonna be Ace, but then he drops the line that the accident that normally would have Alders lose his arm actually happened to the Ace of his timeline. Which is fine, the twist itself is fine. But I feel a bit, it's a little bit odd that everything that happens in this island circles back somehow to the crew of the Hammerheads of this particular timeline. The crew threatens Durban and they demand that he gives Sandy's core back, which he seems to do. But before Ace can take him out, Durban has Leviathan warp him away, and says that the war games will end when he decides they are over. Back at the ship, the core happens to be a grenade, and Alders manages to throw it out of the ship before they get blown up. Alders, however, is visibly shaken by how evil his alternate self is, so he has a bit of an existential crisis, just like Majesty did. Majesty manages to calm him down, and then they group hug, especially with big ol' Lorenzo hugging the entire group. They also have Alders think of what his alternate timeline self would want with Golden Goose. He thinks really hard on it, and he decides that he just wants Golden Goose for himself, because that would allow him to basically control the world, if he's the only source of Hyssal. After gathering a few more pieces of the Golden Goose, the crew calls up some signs again, to try to persuade him to help them destroy the Leviathan. They mention how Durban is definitely gonna make a break to take Golden Goose all for himself, and that signs will get thrown away if he becomes useless. They do say that they are gonna attempt to destroy Leviathan, which Signs does not agree on. because he does not want to lose the Golden Goose technology and the riches that come with it. But he does know that Durbin will definitely kill him eventually. So Science gives the crew the firmware update that Magnum tried to send to the crew way back towards the beginning of the story. But lets them know that they need a way to give the transmitter device enough power to enable a jump through time with the entire ship. After they're discussing their plan of attack, they receive a call from Durbin, who has found out that Science has betrayed him and has Leviathan kill him in a pretty brutal manner that was actually discussed back when it was revealed that it's alternate Alders. After this, the crew tries to decide if they even have a chance of defeating Leviathan and Durbin. After running some probabilities with Sandy, Lorenzo says screw it, that they're gonna go for it. As he's giving a speech to his crew, Alders has it be broadcast to the other crews in the other timelines. Apparently, there was way more crews than I thought besides Magnum's crew, but I guess this is done to rouse them up, and, you know, all the missions that we play are against other exosuits or with other people teaming up with us, so it only makes sense that there's actually more crews, but it's weird that it's never mentioned until really now. Anyways, when the mission triggers, the crew flies into the the core platform where Leviathan is located at. Something that I didn't mention is that Durbin wants the ultimate suit that Leviathan is obsessively trying to create. He does name drop this suit during one of the raid missions that you do, and I'll mention it right now. It's called Behemoth, and this is where you actually fight the Behemoth. During this mission, you fight Durbin, who is piloting the Behemoth, and once he goes down, Durbin is actually executed by Leviathan itself inside the suit, and then Leviathan takes over the suit because he believes he is the perfect pilot that is able to pilot the perfect suit. And another battle ensues against the Behemoth, but this time with Leviathan controlling it. After we defeat Leviathan, it seems like Leviathan's not truly defeated, but I guess we'll find out when more content drops for this game. As Ace is trying to walk away from the defeated Behemoth, the spirit, or I don't even know, of Yannick Naughty comes out and thanks Ace for stopping the cycle and stopping Leviathan. Also, he hands Ace Sandy's core. I am not 100% sure how he even got this to begin with, but we're just gonna let that go. As the crew flies away from Bikitoa Island and Sandy being restored, Lorenzo's sister actually starts contacting them. She lets them know that Ibius knows they have Golden Goose, and Ibius is accusing them of stealing corporate secrets and gives them coordinates to fly to. At this point, Lorenzo's like, screw it, we're just gonna keep doing what they don't expect us to do, and credits roll. At this point, I have no idea how exactly they're gonna go with the story. Leaves on a pretty open note. But it's a little bit unfortunate that the cutscenes can't happen without you even looking over at the analysis tree at any point. So some of the things that our characters happen to know or get revealed are a little weird if you do not occasionally look at the analysis tree. But before I go into the characters themselves and the voice acting, I will be showing the timeline of the story if it got a little bit too confusing or convoluted, so you have a good understanding of what the general story is. I'll show a timestamp if you want to skip that.
There it is. We now know more about this island than anyone else on Earth.
In multiple timeline color code.
That's pretty simple when you have all the pieces. Well, simple is a relative term, of course. Look, this is what started it all. The Origin Suit's pilot, Yannick Naughty, tries to go back in time and prevent his future by destroying Leviathan, but ends up hurled back to the Cretaceous period. That's the first change in the timeline. Nadi dies, and his exosuit stays buried for millions of years. Ibius finds the exosuit and the futuristic technology. It blows their minds. They reverse engineer it, and they realize they've got their hands on an energy revolution.
Heisel. And because they are greedy, unscrupulous bastards, they build a world full of stratovators, all Golden Goose equipped, to drill into the past and break down space-time, overseen by an unprecedented AI developed from Origin Suit Tech, which was exactly the world Nadi wanted to prevent.
Which cues up Future Past You. Future Past You goes back to prevent Ibius from getting Golden Goose, and thus the second alteration of the island's history occurs, and the timeline changes again. The entire Bickertoan culture comes from future you going too far back in time and being mistaken for a goddess. Then we have a lull in the time travel antics with not much happening until 2020, but 2020 hits, and wham! Ibius finds the Origin suit, and the entire cycle begins again.
And so we come to August 16th, 2040. Ibius gives Leviathan full control of the Stratovator's Golden Goose array, with nobody realizing it is obsessed with developing exosuits. Next thing we know, dinosaurs are raining from the sky all over Island. Leviathan makes itself perfect exosuit testing ground.
Right. So, Haruka tries to destroy Leviathan, but she can't, because she can't create enough Lozol to do the job. She's got Yannick Nadi on her side, or some echo of him that's still bouncing around the Ibius systems, but somehow Leviathan catches on to what they're doing.
Surprise, surprise, machine programmed by amoral maniacs is amoral maniac.
Leviathan purges all the Lozol off the Stratovator control platform, which explodes and sends the cable crashing down on the island.
The Bickertoa incident.
Dr. Garrett Signs escapes alive, but Golden Goose is lost in the wreckage. Ibius stands to lose their Hyzal energy revolution.
And in the meantime, Leviathan still running war games on the island, repeating the Bickertoa incident day after day, time after time. All while space-time distortions and dinosaurs become a damn pandemic, and innocent people all over the world pay the price.
Ibius creates problem and then sells world the solution. They form exofighter squads, and we crash on the island, and Leviathan gets Ace as a new plaything for the war game. Magnum, Durbin, Dr. Signs, and God knows how many others all arrive on the same way in their own separate timelines.
Now, Magnum thought he'd found a way out when he got part of Golden Goose, but that only made him a target for Durbin. And we were next. Little did we know we were up against the most deadly foe of all. Me, with 2 arms.
You forgot part about them being disgusting grave robbers, using corpse to do dirty work.
Zombies. Ugh.
Anchor Division, Haruka, Golden Goose, and... zombies. All of it, it's all there.
What I don't understand, what's this thing's motive? How does an AI become obsessed? Dinosaurs, self-preservation. There's no way for a computer to behave.
Well, I think we've all seen just how little it takes for a really good AI to develop into something more.
Compliment acknowledged.
Oh, so much history, all of it leading to us, right here, right now.
I mean, you could almost call it fate. And look at us. Haruka's brother, Durbin's doppelganger, the goddess of Bickertoa herself, and Ace, the best exo fighter in the fleet.
Second best.
Yes, right. Sorry, Madge. The point is, out of thousands of exo fighter crews out there, it's come down to us.
But the chart is missing one thing.
What's that, Chief?
We're about to be the most important thing that ever happened on this island. Sandy.
Understood.
Perfect.
The voice acting is actually solid. The characters' voices sound genuine and express what they're feeling. And there are some funny quips during the story, but I feel some of them are a little misplaced. Like when now there's mentions that he hits Science Grave after he throws away the grenade that Durbin sent them. And also, the main big elephant in the room is during cutscenes where Ace is present, which is quite a few of them. He's just there gesturing, which is not great. Obviously, he's described as the silent type, but he's pretty much mute. There's a scene where Sandy makes a joke, and Ace laughs, but it's awkward because not even a sound comes out. I guess, obviously, people can't laugh where they laugh so hard no noise comes out, but I'm pretty sure that was not the point. I feel like they could have given Ace 2 voice actors, since it is your character to make. It can Ace can be female or male, but I think they could have made gotten some extra voice actors to kind of just at least make him do noises, you know. But pretty much all the characters are likable, and Signs feels like an asshole, which he's supposed to be, and also Durbin is a bit of a cocky bastard, but that's the point. Anyways, so we're gonna move on to a little short section now, which is gonna be the sounds. Alright, the sound section is gonna be pretty brief because I generally don't focus on it, besides the music being pretty good. The dinosaur sounds sound as you expect, the attacks and abilities, landing sound satisfying, and the quips, as I mentioned way back at the gameplay section, can get a little repetitive, but they're fine. And also, we're gonna move on to graphics, so this is also something I personally don't really focus on in games in general. As I always will say, gameplay is king, but obviously, the graphics will enhance or diminish your experience in general. But I will happily say that the suits look great. All the designs of the suits, whether you're using a cosmetic or not, are good. The dinosaurs look great, they look pretty accurate. I will say that Pachylosaurus are a little bit bigger than expected, but besides that, all the dinosaurs look great, the suits look great. The environments are pretty good and what you expect of them. I will say that sometimes you will get the same environment consistently until you start going through the story, and then you'll look into other environments, because most of the time you'll be in the main city of Bikatoa or in the caves, but eventually you'll also move on to an airport, a dam, and I believe obviously the dimensional space that Leviathan resides in when you do the raid missions, and also the final mission, which takes place in the core platform in space. I will mention that I am playing on an Xbox One S, not next gen, I'm playing on last gen, so my gameplay footage is gonna look maybe a little rougher, but if you play on PC or current gen rather, the game will probably look way better. So after putting about 35 hours or even more into this game, mostly to get the analysis tree done and be able to see the end of the game, I will say the game is definitely fun, especially if you play with your friends. However, I wouldn't recommend this game to anyone unless I know they have Game Pass, because I feel this game should be free to play, and it definitely feels that way. This is a fun game that is trapped in the games as a service model, and that is definitely apparent as soon as you start playing the game. This game probably should not be 60 bucks. Maybe 40 I would say would be the most I would charge for this game if I personally developed it with, you know, a crew. But for now, if you have access to Game Pass, try it out. Definitely try it out. But otherwise, I would say just wait for this game to either go on sale, or maybe eventually it'll actually go to a free-to-play model. In the end, I would give this game at most a 7. The gameplay is fun, and the story is interesting enough, even though it gets a little weird. The suits are great, and the dino fighting is just fun and satisfying, even though it can eventually get a little stale if you overplay like I did. I will say the story should make me care a little more about certain characters, but you know, sometimes stories are not the main focus of the game, even though this game main focus should be the gameplay, and it looks like it is. I will say also that the writers maybe tried a little bit too hard to make the main crew like the important group, obviously, because that's the crew you belong to, but maybe they could have not done that and expanded a little more on the side. Anyways, guys, let me know what you think of Exoprimal, whether you agree, disagree with my opinions, what kind of rating you would give this game, and if you actually enjoyed or just didn't like the game at all. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.